Northeast Tonight, brought to you by Oil India Limited, conquering newer horizons.
Hello and welcome to Northeast Tonight, the show that decodes the region. The Northeast is truly at the top in the battle against COVID and can certainly be called India's green zone, with the number of active cases standing at only 20 today in a population of 45 million spread over 8 states. Meghalaya currently has 11 active cases and Assam 9, and the rest of the region is COVID-free. The leadership in the Northeast displayed by the governments in the northeastern states is exemplary, and the question that everyone in the region is asking now is whether we can capitalize on the situation and seize the opportunity of our region being near COVID-free and bring the economic activity back. I have with me on the show two dynamic leaders of the Northeast, Chief Minister Zoramthanga of Mizoram and Mr. Conrad Sangma of Meghalaya. Remember, viewers, both Conrad Sangma and Zoramthanga have succeeded in keeping things under control despite challenges as far as medical infrastructure is concerned. I will ask them of their plan in the days after the lockdown and lots more. I will also be joined later in the show from Shillong by the editor of the Shillong Times, Ms. Patricia Mukim, and from Itanagar by Jarpum Gamlin, a political and social activist. Gentlemen, welcome to Northeast Tonight. First, I would like to go straight to you, Mr. Conrad Sangma, Chief Minister of Meghalaya. First of all, thank you very much for joining me on Northeast Tonight live from Shillong. Mr. Conrad Sangma, how would you describe your battle against COVID-19? Is there still a scare in Meghalaya where you have 11 positive cases as of today?
Yeah, so thank you, Wasbir, for having us over in the show. I think the overall situation when this initially broke out was quite challenging for our state. And the reason, of course, was the fact that, the case that came up was from a medical fraternity,
right,
which means that we had a huge contact tracing that needed to be done. So we had almost close to 6,000 secondary cases, 200 plus primary cases, the immediate staff and patients, about 500-600 of them, and about 700 people who we needed to quarantine. So the operation itself was massive, and it was a challenge for us at that moment. But I think overall, because of the fact that early lockdown and some early initiatives at the state level were taken, so we could contain the spread to a large extent because of that. And we were quite lucky, I should say, that it is not spread to, to too many primary contacts. So that's the number one point that is there. But number two, I think, no matter what we do, I think the lesson from this entire episode is that one cannot be complacent at any given time.
Absolutely.
So yes, we may be a green zone in Northeast, and yes, we may have been able to contain to some extent. I think we need to be careful equally in the coming days. And therefore, we can't let our guard down, and we need to ensure that our team responds quickly, is motivated, and we take all the precautions and measures to be prepared.
Okay, give me a minute, Mr. Conrad Sangma. I have with me Zoramthanga, the Chief Minister of Mizoram, joining me from Aizawl. Zoramthanga, welcome. There was one positive case in Mizoram, that of the pastor. How did you go about keeping things under control in your state? Zoramthanga.
In Mizoram, number one, even though here internally we don't have much of a problem because we have only a single COVID patient. But nevertheless, we are surrounded in the east by Myanmar, Burma, who is having a lot of problems. And on the west is Bangladesh, who is having a lot of problems. And Manipur, Assam, and Tripura are on the northern part also. So we have to be aware of all these things, especially the international borders. They are mainly the jungles, and easily the people from the other side of this country can pass through. So all my paramilitary forces, that is the police and the CRP, as well as the BSF and some rifles, they are trying their best to maintain the border sealed. But the most important is the local volunteers people, which we call the local task force.
Okay.
Of course, there is a state level task force, district level task force, and the local task force. The local task force are the most important people, and they keep vigil on these borders all along. As soon as we can more or less contain this crossing of the border people, then inside Mizoram there is no much problem.
Okay. All right. Can you, Mr. Conrad Sangma, you want the lockdown to continue after the 3rd of May. Does that mean without the lockdown, the number of cases could have been much higher, Mr. Conrad Sangma?
Yeah, I think there is no doubt about that. If you look at the numbers and compare it to the global scenario, whether it's the number of positive cases or even the death toll that is there in India compared to the rest of the world, you would see that the numbers are far lesser in India, especially compared to the size of its population.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think there's a clear indication that the lockdown formula and whatever has been done in the past has worked to a large extent. I mean, we can continue to debate about the plus and minus, but overall, I think we would see to a large extent it has actually helped, and it has allowed the numbers to be controlled to a large extent. So therefore, keeping that experience in mind, I think continuation of some sort of a lockdown and restriction, especially in public transport, looks like a good formula to move ahead with. It is inconvenient for the people. It will cause a bit of problem for everybody. But I think at this point in time, the bigger challenge is the containment of COVID. And I think the larger interest has to be seen in this whole situation.
Okay.
So therefore, I think it should continue with, of course, some relaxation in some economic activities, which is being done to a large extent. But I think it should be opened up more, especially in areas in green zones where we don't have such cases. But I think the movement should be restricted. I think it's important now to see the country as 28, 29 different zones in terms of states. It's important to see the country as economic zones.
Yeah.
I think it's important to see the country as COVID and non-COVID zones, and accordingly, make formulas and make policies based on that. And I think the same yardstick cannot be used for the nation as a whole.
No, now, Mr. Conrad Sangma, with less than 20 cases, as I've said in my introduction, with less than 20 cases in the entire Northeast, that has a population of 45 million, it is nothing but a green zone, actually. Now, my question is, a lot of people would want to know from leaders like you, how can the states or the region as a whole capitalize on this situation, that of near COVID-free? How can we regenerate economic activity?
You see, I have always been a very optimistic and positive person. I keep telling my officers also that this is a big challenge for us. But I've always believed that in crisis and in challenges, lies opportunity. If you look at in the past history, nations and states that have responded to such crises and such situations in innovative ways have led to gaining. So therefore, I think it's the same situation we're facing now. Northeast is in a very, very good position to take advantage of this situation and convert this crisis into an opportunity. I think it'll be important that the states respond by creating a conducive, policy environment, ensuring that the local economies, prosper, ensuring that the gaps that we see in the market can be filled in by our people, and ensuring that the youth can play an innovative and entrepreneurial role in the entire process. So I think states will have to really, and it should be done fast. I think we cannot wait any longer. I think the economic activity, I think each state should come out with their economic plan, and then the region as a whole can collaborate together and come out with a regional plan and then talk with Government of India and see how it could be implemented in a very aggressive manner.
Right. Right. Now, Mr. Zoramthanga, the current pandemic brought into focus, the poor health infrastructure in the Northeast, Mizoram included. Now, any lesson learned, because this has brought to focus the health infrastructure in the entire Northeast?
Well, certainly that is the most important. For example, in Mizoram, as I have said, it is bounded on both sides by the international borders of Myanmar and Bangladesh. India is a little far off, and we are only over a million people. Therefore, we have to prepare ourselves in the health infrastructure. We have not got even one medical college. It is just in the infant stage. We just started the medical college. We need help from the central government because it's very expensive. And at the same time, not only in order to establish the medical college, apart from the financial
Can we have the screens changed,
what we
please?
need
Yes.
is the medical doctors and medical workers. So we have to strive hard to have a good medical infrastructure, hospital, medical college, and we have learned a lot of lessons in the present COVID problem.
Okay, now, while asking the producers also to keep the screen changing, not get stuck with one thing. Now, Mr. Zoramthanga, you have said Mizoram has been religiously enforcing the lockdown. How has it become possible? Mr. Zoramthanga.
The Mizo people, and on every Sunday morning when the church bell rings, everyone, right from the small boys and girls up to the old age people, they go to the church to attend the church meeting. That has been the custom all along. But now, because of the lockdown, the church decreed that we should not have a church service because it is dangerous concerning the COVID. So the church has commanded and the people followed, and we are conscious of that. Even the church service is totally stopped. And not only that, apart from the schools and apart from other meeting of the local people, even in the funeral service also, people are very, I should say that regimented, and they strictly follow the instructions from the government.
Okay.
Here in Mizoram, in every locality, there is a loudspeaker, a mic, controlled by the local YMA, Young Mizo Association, NGO, making an announcement here and there in everything. Therefore, even at the time of the lockdown, any instructions coming from the government, it is announced there in the loudspeaker, and all the people knows it. And in some places, it is announced even in a Hindi, so that the non-Hindi, non-Mizo speaking people would be able to understand. People are so cooperative, religiously, socially. So it has been a great success, which could be an example all over India.
Okay. Now, let me go to Shillong. Mr. Conrad Sangma, what has the pandemic taught you so far? What does it say about the poor health infrastructure? This was the question I was asking your counterpart in Mizoram, Mr. Zoramthanga. He said that yes, they don't even have a proper medical college, but same is the case with Meghalaya. You don't have a medical college really. You have the Negrims, of course, state of the art, but beyond that, there is health infrastructure is an issue, isn't it?
Yes, I think health infrastructure is an issue throughout the country, in fact. And I think in this COVID situation, a lot of that has come to light. Meghalaya, of course, and Shillong has been slightly better compared to other parts of the Northeast, where at least we have institutes like NIGRIMS. And our connectivity also is easier with other parts of the country. So therefore, with that aspect in mind, of course, a lot more needs to be done. And I think we need to ensure that not just medical colleges, and having infrastructure in the urban areas, we need to ensure that the rural areas and the entire system in the rural area should be also strengthened. And I think that will be the key in the future to really fight against situations like these, because
Right.
the response has to be quick. And so, therefore, if any kind of a medical emergency comes in, there should be localized solutions. So I think PHCs, CHCs need to be equipped,
Yeah.
and the people need to be trained well.
Now, Mr. Sangma, what is your resolve now? How do you plan to prioritize things in the days ahead, and what would be your focus areas? Because a lot of people are extremely worried, because a lot of people are thinking what is going to happen to the economy. They're worried about their job loss. Some of the existing, not that the Northeast has very many big industries, whatever is there also is totally hit by this lockdown for so long. How do you plan? What will be your focus areas now?
Of course, health will always remain a priority, and we will ensure that we continue to strengthen our health sector. But coming to economy, I think different steps have already been taken. We have already started implementing policies to ensure that the businesses start off. But I think in the medium and in the long term, the entire focus area might need to be shifted. Now, let me be very frank that sectors like tourism are going to be hit for the next few months. Now, states like Assam and even Meghalaya and other parts, we did rely quite a bit on tourism and in the livelihood created by it. So now, how do we shift our policy to ensure that we can fill up that particular gap? It needs to be worked on. And whatever initial analysis we've been doing, Meghalaya, the strength still lies in agriculture, in food processing, in value addition. The only challenge we have is to create the logistics around it. So I
Right.
think we need to work towards that, and I think the human resource can be used in the proper manner.
Now, one more thing,
We are,
Mr. Conrad Sangma. With the entire economic activity shut because of the lockdown, in any case, the northeastern states, particularly small states like Meghalaya, the revenue generation, the internal revenue generation is always not very much. But the lockdown must have, denied the government of whatever revenue it is to generate internally. So will you be depending only on the assistance from the center, and will you be expecting much more assistance from the center because of this eventuality?
yeah, there are basically three areas of the main revenue that comes in. And obviously, the share of central taxes is almost 80% of that for most of the Northeast states. So therefore, the maximum dependence will be on the share of central taxes. Uh, States like Meghalaya and to some extent, to large extent, sorry, like Assam, do have other sources also internally. Other states have lesser. But excise, the VAT, royalty that we have, the non-tax revenue we have.
Right.
So these areas have been hit very badly in the last 2 months. But I strongly feel that if allowed to work, it could recover to some extent. The third aspect will be the loans that we take. And debt is one aspect that even central government and state governments are looking towards. Now, the FRBM Act allows us to take 3% of our GDP as debt.
Right.
There's been a demand by all the states that we should increase that threshold from 3% to 5%. Now, that would add, as you can make out, almost close to 60, 70% more in terms of the debt that the states can take. So these are the three areas. And I think still for the Northeast, it's the share of central taxes which will play the major role.
Okay. Zoramthanga, same question we had asked. We have got to know about what is the plan in Meghalaya. We want to know what is your plan. Everybody wants to know what after May 3rd. Are you in favor of extending the lockdown in Mizoram?
Here in Mizoram, as far as Mizoram is concerned, the problem, as I have said, is we have only one COVID victim. But surrounded on all sides by the burning houses, whether in the Burma side or in the Bangladesh side. So as far as the border areas are concerned, we have to be very, very strict in restraining the entry of any outsiders.
Right.
Inside Mizoram, we could relax a little, especially in the field of economic activities, etc. We'll be relaxing a little, depending upon the circumstances. But as far as the government of Indian side is concerned, you know that every day, either 40 people, 50 people, or even more died every day. It is increasing. Therefore, simply a lockdown cannot be withdrawn, but it has to be in a phased manner. That is, I cannot say about the whole of India. The central government will know it better. As far as Mizoram is concerned, we will have to keep vigil on all our borders very strictly. And as far as the interior is concerned, a gradual relaxation in the field of economy, etc., can be done a little.
Gradual relaxation. No, Mr. Conrad Sangma of Meghalaya is saying that, we can, in fact, there is scope to capitalize on the fact that we have very little COVID cases in the northeastern region. It is almost a green zone. Zoramthanga, how can we capitalize on this? How can we go forward now? Zoramthanga.
Yes, certainly. We can lead the nation, the population, the NGO, and the religious leaders in this concern. Because here in the Northeast, people are very cooperative in this matter. Therefore, we can set an example for the rest of the country as far as the implementation of this lockdown is concerned.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Mr. Conrad Sangma, hundreds and thousands of youths, including a large number from Meghalaya, would like to return home, once the lockdown gets over. They have been holed up in different parts of the country. Most are workers in the unorganized private sectors. Many of them may even lose their jobs. Now, how could you possibly deal with these people? Huge pressure as far as the livelihood front is concerned. Have you applied your mind on this aspect?
Yeah, there are three things to this. Number one, of course, is the fact that when will they be able to come in? Now, even though the states may prepare, the national level decision for movement of public transport like planes and trains will have to be taken. Now, we don't know about the future of that, but looks like it may not open up beyond the 3rd, after the 3rd also. That's number one. Number two, I think if it does open or when it opens up, I think the states will need to have their entry and entry protocols ready. In fact, entry manual ready. We have been working on this for the past almost 1 week, trying to come out with the entry protocols, which requires registration, and then after that, checking at the border, and then after that, the quarantining, and how the society and the locality and the house should quarantine, the people for the next 14 days. Third, of course, is the fact that some of them will be people who will be workers and laborers or maybe coming back. Yeah. So I think engaging them back into the local economy will be the medium-term and long-term challenge. And I think in there, I see an opportunity where, of course, we also as a state need to move forward. So can the skills of these people be put into the gaps that come up in the economy out here? That is really going to be a big challenge, and I feel that it can be done. Okay. So these are the three aspects to be looked into, but I'm sure if it's planned well, I think all the states will be able to,
I think that is a very interesting idea. I will not delay you. I only want a few more minutes from you, Mr. Conrad Sangma. Zoramthanga, you have heard, Mr. Conrad Sangma is talking about this issue. Are you also worried about job loss to local youths? After the lockdown, they will all be coming home, and some of them may not be able to go back because they may not be having immediately a job. Zoramthanga.
Well, certainly, we are really worried about that. But here in Mizoram, in the context of Mizoram, we don't have big industries and a lot of people working there, we don't have. We are mainly depending upon agroforest-based economy. That is economically what is called the primary sector economy. In Mizoram, my intention is that we have a land which can fit 2 to 3 times the present population of Mizoram.
Yeah.
So if we utilize that, we'll not have much problem as far as economic development is concerned. We can cultivate, produce, harvest, and then process, and then market it. It can be done here in Mizoram based on the primary sector economy, which many of the states did not have. Therefore, based on that, I am intending to revolutionize Mizoram economy, whether it is after the COVID or even before that. I have had that policy. So it still is my intention to do this. I need the help of the government of India in financial matters and others also.
Absolutely, that is extremely important. Mr. Conrad Sangma, now a lot of people are thinking, how will the Northeast bounce back? Already we are industrially underdeveloped. We have a lot of disadvantages. Now, do you think the Northeast should work together, perhaps with a common economic strategy as one entity, or do you think every state should prepare their individual plans? What is your idea?
Yeah, I think I would like to say two things in that. Number one, that because the industrialization is not to the level where it is in other parts of the country, I think, yes, one way it is to look at it is it's the disadvantage at one point. But I think at this point, it's an advantage. That means we have a clean slate and we can really start off now and learn from the mistakes also, number one, and we can also seize the opportunity as it unfolds now. So that's the first part, that though we may not be industrialized to that level, but I think it's a positive thing and it's something we can take advantage of. Second thing which you mentioned about the states working individually or together, obviously there needs to be individual policy also, because every state is unique.
Yeah.
And it needs to look at local conditions. But I think in the long run, the Northeast should always look at itself as a region. It's only when we give the size will it really appeal to others. It should become like a European Union zone, which looks at it as a complete market, whether we are able to absorb the market like a consumer or export the quantity of products required by the world. I think it can only happen if the Northeast comes together. And I've always been advocating that we should come out with joint policies. You know, if it's even if you look at Bangladesh or Burma,
Yeah.
these are markets for us. But they will look at us in a much more serious way if we as a Northeast unite and we work and we ensure that we project a common front.
Now, Zoramthanga, joint strategy for the Northeast, or you would like to work alone as individual states?
Well, if we have to do things together, that would be the best, because we have a chicken neck connection with the rest of the country there in West Bengal and Assam. Therefore, if those lines were cut, then the whole Northeast is cut off. Therefore, we will have to strive together, whether in the field of road infrastructure or railway infrastructure or economic development, because we are under the Northeastern Council, under the donor. Therefore, we'll have to strive together.
Strive together. So at least two chief ministers of the Northeast viewers wants that the Northeast should work together as a single entity, perhaps. Of course, everybody will have their own plans, but there are scope to work together. Mr. Conrad Sangma, what according to you would be a good and workable exit plan after the lockdown?
No, I think exit plan really to get a good and a complete exit plan without a vaccine for COVID-19 is something that is not going to be easy. But I think the only thing we can do right now, given the situation that we are in, and maybe a year, year and a half, 2 years, whatever it takes for the vaccine, I think we need to adapt. We need to, number one, accept that this thing is happening. And then we need to look at what are the policies to put in place. We need to adapt, change the way we do things. I think technology is going to play a very, very important role. So I think the way we're doing interview with you now on Skype and on other platforms, will become a more integral part of society, of even the governance, and I think consumers and business economic activity also. And apart from that, obviously, the entire way we function, whether it's in social gatherings or in the marketplace, I think all of this will need to be adapted. It's not. I'm not trying to paint a very, sad picture, but I'm just trying to say that we need to be prepared. So the way I see it is that if it's an immediate exit plan, then it has to be economic activities
Yeah.
taken a step at a time without compromising on the health, and then improve on it, adapt to it, and use of technology. And I hope that soon, faster than what others are saying, I hope that we'll be able to find a vaccine to it.
No, no,
And once
no.
that were to happen,
Yeah.
I'm sure that we will see the economic activity come back to normalcy, because this is not a kind of an economic challenge which has been there because of a reduction in demand or any kind of economic issue. It's because of a crisis in terms of the medical
Okay.
sector.
Now you see, Mr. Conrad Sangma, lot of manufacturing companies are planning to pull out of China because of the virus and so on. Now, a lot of these companies, are eyeing India. Do you think, have you ever thought that Meghalaya also could be a destination? Because you have an access to, Bangladesh, very easy access. And there will be the airport is also not very far away. You have one in Shillong, and of course the major airport in Guwahati. So have you ever applied your mind on this?
Absolutely. I think it's not just in the COVID situation, but even before that, we have always felt that if, Northeast and Meghalaya state and all the states in the Northeast, if we need to move forward, we need to look at ourselves as being part of a global value chain. It is only once we come into the aspect of being a part of a global value chain, that's the only way we can see sustained economic growth and development. So yes, we have always felt like that. And as I was mentioning earlier, that in a situation where this crisis has come in,
Yeah.
and China is going to, I think, going to suffer a bit, I think it opens up a huge opportunity for India. And I think Prime Minister has mentioned it. And definitely, I think the whole of Northeast, and I can assure you, Meghalaya will be right at the front to ensure that we create the policies and the environment to ensure that these investments come to our region.
Zoramthanga, I will shorten my questions. I'll skip and I will ask you a question. Mizoram will soon have access to the sea through the Situe port in Myanmar. And now that a lot of manufacturing companies, as I had asked Mr. Conrad Sangma, they're pulling out of China. Do you see also Mizoram as a destination because you will have access to the sea through the Situe port in neighboring Myanmar?
Well, certainly we welcome those developing companies who will be useful for the economy of Mizoram. There, through Situe, through the Kaladan River, we shall soon, I hope, will have an access to the sea. Not only that, if we have a good relation with the Bangladesh government through Chittagong, it is much nearer and much easier the sea outlet we can have, which I used to discuss even with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Therefore, these two sea outlets, one is through Chittagong, the other is through Situe. We can have a sea outlet, and then with a vast land we have here, with a lot of prospect that we have here, we can develop Mizoram. That is why I used to say that I'm intending to revolutionize Mizoram economy one way or the other.
My final question to you, Zoramthanga, Mizoram can be a destination for global manufacturing companies.
Well, it is a small state. We shall not be able to contain much, but in order to manufacture, process the product of Mizoram, some good companies may come in, and we can do that. Not only that, if we have a sea outlet through Chittagong, as well as Situe, many of the northeastern states may be able to avail this opportunity, because in order to pass through the chicken neck corridor of the West Bengal and Assam. It needs a lot of money for the transportation. But through the sea outlet, it may be cheaper. Therefore, I believe that whether it is Manipur, Nagaland, southern part of Assam, or even Tripura, apart from Mizoram, it may be beneficial to have an access through the seaport.
All right, all right. Now, final question to you, Mr. Conrad Sangma. Will the world be the same again? What do you think, and how are you spending? Of course, you are a very busy man, but what are you doing apart from your non-stop work?
Thank you for the question. I think it's I think it's a very relevant question for not just me, but I think for everyone.
Yeah.
But having said that, of course, the way things are going to happen, as I mentioned, is not going to be the same anymore. And we'll have to really adapt to a corona age, and hopefully the vaccine will come soon. But till then, we have to adapt and change. So that's number one. And coming to number two, I think obviously because of the limitations of us not being able to go out anywhere except just to office and back, we get some time with family. So that's a good thing. Spending more time with my family, spending more time with myself also. And I think it's great, getting a lot of time to think and read a lot of things also. So thank you for asking that, Wasbir.
Absolutely. Conrad Sangma and Zoramthanga, thank you very much indeed for speaking to me on Northeast Tonight despite your extremely busy schedule. People obviously in this, the idea why I had decided to have both of you on the program, and I am very grateful to both of you for agreeing to participate in this program, giving so much of time. The idea is basically if the people can hear from their leaders directly, there is nothing like that, and that helps them gain a lot of confidence and that eliminate a lot of disturbing and fake news which is doing the rounds these days. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for speaking to me on Northeast Tonight. I'll go for a short break. Don't go away. When I come back, I'll be joined by Ms. Patricia Mukim, the editor of Shillong Times, and Mr. Jarpum Gamlin, a political and social activist from Itanagar. Welcome back, viewers. I am now joined by Ms. Patricia Mukim, the editor of the Shillong Times, a highly vocal commentator, and Mr. Jarpum Gamling joining me from Itanagar Live, a political and social activist. Welcome, both of you. Ms. Patricia Mukim, as you have heard, both Mr. Conrad Sangma, the Chief Minister of Meghalaya, and Mr. Zoramthanga, the Chief Minister of Mizoram, they have a lot of focus areas, both of them said, but one common thing which both the two chief ministers said is that Northeast should work together. It will be a great idea for the Northeast to work as a single entity, to bring the economic activity back and capitalize on the fact that we are almost a green zone. Only 20 COVID cases in a population of 45 million. Ms. Patricia Mukim, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's inevitable that we have to work as a region. But Wasbir, as Mr. Conrad Sangma has stated, we cannot go back to normal as in what we have been doing in the past. We now have to reconfigure our future. And I would like to remind Mr. Conrad Sangma that, Meghalaya has a Meghalaya Economic Development Council, which was actually initiated and passed by the Assembly sometime in the early 90s, when Mr. Salseng Marak was the Chief Minister. The purpose of this Meghalaya Economic Development Council is to chart out an economic course for the state, to look at its strong points, to look at its natural resources, its human resources, and the possibilities that the state offers, that its human resource offers. I think it is very important to revive this MEDC because over the years it has just become an institution for rehabilitating politicians, like every other institution. And the other thing I'd like to say is that the NEC, the Northeastern Council, and the Department of the Northeastern Region both have to be reconfigured now. We cannot take them as the institutions that they have been for so long. They will have to rethink their priorities. They'll have to repackage everything and give us a new vision. We need to re-envision this region. And, maybe we need to look at areas that we haven't looked at before.
Right. Okay, there's a very
for instance,
important...
in this region, we cannot have...
Carry on.
We cannot have smokestack industries. We are a hotspot, biodiversity hotspot. So we have to be conscious of that. We cannot have too much pollution, but we have a human resource that is very well equipped in terms of its knowledge of English and also very skilled with their hands. So these are our great strengths.
Okay, very, very interesting points, very important points being made. We have economic development councils, we have organizations after organizations, development bodies after development bodies. But we have the donor ministry, we have NEC, and what Ms. Patricia Mukim now said, we have a development council in Meghalaya as well, which is a state level organization. So there has to be synergy between all these agencies. We'll develop on this point. But Mr. Jarpom Gamlin, both the two chief ministers really more or less admitted that the health infrastructure is a huge issue in the entire Northeast. Take the case of Arunachal Pradesh. There is hardly any health infrastructure. The health infrastructure is extremely poor in a state like Arunachal Pradesh. It's already a far-flung state, already a very remote state. And what happens when people have difficulties as far as the health sector? What is your observation?
Precisely. I think you have hit the nail. One, we need to understand we are largely dependent on the basic. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yes. I can hear you.
Okay, I'm getting the echo actually. I can't hear. So, yeah, number one, see, like I have said in 2 or 3 occasions earlier in your program, we are the most laggard state in terms of healthcare facility. So mostly the creamy layers, when there's a health issue, they fly down either to Guwahati, to Vellore, to Delhi, or even to Calcutta. So, but for the poor, it's the final destination is Itanagar or Dibrugarh at most. Yeah. And even in the rural sector, the last denominator of health sector is the ASHA worker, accredited social workers.
So don't you think, Jarpom Gamling, don't you think that being a far-flung state, the center is very liberal? The center has always been liberal in allocating funds to a sensitive state like Arunachal Pradesh. Do you think it reflects a complete failure of the state government in building health infrastructure?
Partially yes, partially no, because I'll tell you, that's a double-edged question, because one, the focus has come very late. But at the same time, I think center has been willing to give the fund. But however, there are local issues in terms of finding the right location and then getting the...
Yeah.
You know, I'm having trouble with my earphone.
Okay, we'll try and fix your audio. We'll try to fix your audio. Hold on. We can perhaps do something about it. My producers will do something about it. But Ms. Patricia Mukim, you know, what is a good exit policy? But point is, how do we bring the economic activity back? You know, nobody seems to have a concrete plan as yet. But what is a workable plan according to you? Mr. Conrad Sangma, Mr. Zoramthanga said that it has to be the primary sector, that is the agriculture sector, that has to be given a lot of priority. In Meghalaya, of course, we have some industries like the cement industry and the mining. So these are some of the issues. But what, according to you, is a workable economic activity which the government needs to focus on now?
See, we are a largely agrarian state, Meghalaya, and therefore I agree with the Chief Minister that it's the agricultural sector that must be boosted now. I'm afraid that the seeds have not come in yet, and a lot of things are not in place. You know, the logistics are not in place, so the government has to really focus on enabling the farmers to get on with their lives, and because we need those products, and we can actually become the processing hub for the state, for the whole of the Northeast, in fact, if we put our act together, if we get our act together. Barnihat could become the processing center, fruit processing center, food processing center. And we have so many of our products that are already online on these online sales portals. You know, like our honey, our turmeric, which is known to be the best in the world because of its high curcumin content. These are the niche markets that we have to explore at this point of time. And about the exit policy, I think the state has to really think carefully. Yesterday, Mr. Conrad Sangma had suggested to the central government that we need to have a rapid response system. In this rapid response system, I think it's the citizens that have to be enlisted so that they become informants of any disaster, any outbreak of COVID-19 in any part of the state, so that you don't have to depend on ASHA workers to go from home to home, but citizens themselves will take the responsibility of reporting. If, for instance, they see a neighbor who's not well, the word spreads very quickly. And Mr. Zoramthanga had mentioned local vigilance systems. No? So I think we need to build up on these local systems where the report of any illness is very quickly done, and immediate medical treatment is offered.
Okay.
Everything is put in place. We need to have a very workable protocol, a standard operating procedure. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you can hear me,
one more thing, Wasbir. One minute. I want to say one more thing. I would like to say here that as far as education is concerned, I don't think it's good to open up everything now, because parents are very worried that the schools will start getting back to normal. Now, nothing is going to be normal, as I said earlier. And the schools are already thinking, if we have a class of 50, then we would have to have 25 students one day and 25 students the other day. So these are strategies that people are working out, that people involved in education are trying to work out. So we shouldn't be in too much of a hurry.
We should not be in too much of a hurry. That is the message from Ms. Patricia Mukim. Now, Mr. Jarpum Gamlin, do you think this COVID situation was a good idea for a state like Arunachal Pradesh to try and build and focus on some permanent health infrastructure, which the government is hardly thinking about?
Wasbir, I think not only for Arunachal, but for the whole of the region, I think it has been a great learning lesson, actually. Insofar as health sector is concerned, I think in the northeastern states, it's the Assam only which is slightly above the mark. Actually, if you look at Guwahati or Dibrugarh, the old capital for healthcare facilities are better actually in Dibrugarh and Guwahati. But whereas Shillong, it has been over the last 5-10 years that it has, because of NIGRIMS, the facility has come up. But be it Manipur, be it Arunachal, be it Tripura, be it the rest of the northeastern states. I think the health facilities have been at par. We have been the laggard state.
It reflects.
So
it
therefore,
reflects.
I think it's
It
a great
reflects.
opportunity that during this
Only Jarpom. It reflects lack of priority by the state government's concern.
Yeah.
Lack of priority, lack of focus of the state government.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the second. Yeah, that's the second point that I wanted to make. It has been not been a priority point either for the state government or for the central government. It has all along. It has been road infrastructure that has been the focus. But I think it's about time that with the great learning that we had from this crisis is that we need to focus on health sector. And why not? I mean, I think it's great. It's possible. The fund is available. The central government has been giving the funds. And on top of that, I think the people, the human resource that we have in the northeastern state, I think if our girls and boys can go out in metros and in Middle East countries and to work as health assistants, as nurses, I think why not? I think these people, there are enough number of talents, enough number of human resource pool that we have that can facilitate, that can help out in functioning of hospital sector. I think that's besides besides tourism, I think we should look at Northeast as a health destination, post this COVID and a post-COVID situation. I think we should try to develop all of the Northeast
my
region
last
as a
point, my
center.
last question, but very important. I would like to ask you, Ms. Patricia Mukim, thousands of students, thousands of youths who are working in the unorganized private sector, they are going to return. They are going to return home once the lockdown is over. Many of them may not have their jobs. Do you think that should be a priority among the northeastern state governments? I'm not asking only about Meghalaya.
Of course, this is going to be perhaps the biggest challenge for the governments of the northeastern states, because in the first place, why did these people go out? They've gone out to look for a job, which means there are not enough employment avenues in the region. And maybe, the state governments in this region have never really exercised their minds on job creation and what kind of job opportunities they need to be creating, because we haven't really... we don't have an economic vision in this region other than mining and, forest products. We haven't really thought through as to what we can do. Of course, like our Chief Minister Conrad Sangma said, tourism has really actually boomed in the region, but it will take some time now. However, I think in the long run, tourism is a really good industry. It's a clean industry. It also can employ a whole lot of young people. My only concern is when they come back, how are we going to systematically quarantine them and systematically allow them to come in without creating too much of, trauma?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have run completely out of time today because I had two chief ministers on the program and two very, very vocal speakers later on. But through Jarpum Gamlin, I would like to extend an standing invitation to your chief minister, Mr. Pema Khandu, to come and join and answer some questions so that his own people, that means people in Arunachal Pradesh, can hear directly from their own chief minister. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much indeed for being on Notice Tonight, and the viewers for watching the show. Good night and goodbye.
Northeast Tonight, brought to you by Oil India Limited, conquering newer horizons.